Hi, everyone. I'm Carla Adams. Thanks for joining us for Friend a Tree Week. My guest today is April Alexander, and April is an herbalist, and I'm going to have her introduce herself and tell about her.
Hi, I'm April. I'm an herbalist and a flower essence practitioner. I live in New York, and I love to talk about things all natural and all spiritual.
That's right. And you offer herbal classes too, right?
I do, yes. I offer herbal classes, and one of these days, I believe they'll get them online.
That would be
But
cool. Yeah.
yeah, that'll be really great. And then, but I do. I offer, I offer classes locally. I do herb walks. I do one-on-one clients. That those I can do online too. And it's been really fun to just be able to see the plants work in our lives. It's been a very humbling experience, and every time I'm always like, wow, they're working. So it's really kind of, some people take things for granted, not me. I'm always like, wow, they're working.
Yeah, awesome. And I was just going to give a little background on Friend a Tree Week about my experience learning how plants worked. Of course, I'd grown gardens for a long time, or I had started doing medicinal herbs and growing those and using them. But I started Friend a Tree Week to go along with my book, which is Ancestral River, A Spiritual Journey for the Living and the Dead. And it just tells the story of my inner healing and spiritual awakening journey as I do ancestral clearing through biofield tuning and being guided by intuition. And it tells, I was shown a few years ago the ancient practice of holding, which is holding our spirit's intentions for our children and for others until they're able to hold it for themselves. And I had been shown that each of us, our deepest spiritual desire and intention is that our minds and our whole selves know what our spirit knows, which is that we are one with God and one with the universe. And then I was showing how trees can help us send those intentions throughout the world because their roots are so connected with everything in the earth through the roots and microbiome of the earth that's all living. And then when we place our hands on the tree and use our minds, which is intention in itself, all our thoughts, and share those intentions for whoever we're thinking of, that they would know our oneness and know their oneness, and then the tree radiates all of our intentions into the light waves of the universe through the pores of the leaves. And
And that makes complete sense because the tree is the most earthly experience here on the, it's what grounds us into the earth. And we're not all born that way. We're not all born grounded into the earth, because now although we are part of the earth, we are now in a box, you know, living in a box, separate from the earth, but still of the earth. And then you go to work and you're in a box, or you go to school and you're in a box. And so even though we're in the earth, and we think we're part of the earth, we're no longer as part of the earth as we once thought we were. So a lot of children are actually being born not embodying the earth. So it's really kind of an interesting experience.
well, yeah, I find that in the biofield, often, I mean, not being connected with the earth shows up in not being grounded and centered within yourself. And so, like, oftentimes in client sessions, our biofield, which extends about 5 to 6 feet around us in every direction and 2 to 3 feet above our head and below our feet, it likes to be about the chakras at the top and bottom of our own biofield like to be about a foot above our head and a foot below our feet. But because of that, not being connected with the earth, and because of our busy lives, and because we haven't been taught all these things, because for generations people have been thinking of moving ahead in life as leaving nature behind in many
Right.
ways, right?
Right. Hmm.
And so this shows in the biofield by contracting, the biofield becomes contracted. And so the top and bottom of your field, instead of being outside your body, are inside your body
Right.
and need to be expanded to help
And
you
I
become.
also think in some spiritual practices, they don't they don't allow for that expansion either. They're like, "Oh, the crown is the top of your head. It's the chakra. The base chakra is right here," so it doesn't allow for that space above and beyond so that way all of our bodies can kind of become expansive in the way that they need to be. You
Well,
know?
yeah, that is so true because what I was shown, it ties back into the ancient practice of holding and knowing our oneness. It's because there's five parts that knowing our oneness or that desire for being part of the whole i-
Mhm.
is broken down into five parts, is what I was shown. And those five parts pertain to five spiritual chakras that each of us have that are in the biofield, not in your body.
Oh, that's
And
interesting.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and
But
there's
it
one
makes it,
below your feet and two above your head, and then further out. So,
oh, that's really interesting.
mhm.
But it also makes sense because you also like this is just our physical body. They don't talk about
Right.
all the other bodies that we have outside of us. So it's like I could totally see how everything kind of becomes contracted, especially when you're not aware of it. It's like just even hearing a story of it. I wonder if that's why fables and like different stories of, like different tales, like the fairy tales or other things like that. I wonder if that's why they were so popular or they've been popular for so long is because they help us to connect to those bodies, through imagination, through play, through, wondering, and imagining, and it's like, and it's not just of this earthly plane. It's like, then it's like, oh, outside of ourselves. Like, I wonder if the fairies are really living in that tree over there,
Right, right, yeah. But
It kind of has like an expansion of your imagination.
it does, just like the tarot cards, they were originally done embedded with deep spiritual thought and astrological energies and other truths of the universe, and but were designed in a way that was everybody knew it, but they were portrayed right in
Right.
all analogies and things through the
Right.
cards.
And too, like just think about the shepherds and like how they were leaning against a tree or other people that would, like walk and work outside. It's like they always use the tree to lean on and kind of like ponder. And, so it's like the shepherds were always the ones closest to the earth because they were constantly leaning on those trees, giving those thoughts and those intentions to the earth of what they thought the world would be. And now mechanizing everything has changed that because you're no longer one in our giant terrarium that we live in. you know it's like people don't realize that it's like as above so below, as within as without. So it's like we live in a giant terrarium. No matter how much we try to remove ourselves from the earth, we can't. you know
R- yeah,
it's like
yeah,
whatever you do to the
thankfully.
right, whatever you do to the earth, that's what's going to come back. And it's like, so I feel like, a lot of the shutting down has helped with reconnecting, to that internal knowing, that slowing down, that wait, I want to be a human being, not a human doing. That awareness of, there's more out there than just chasing the money or just, having the material things for a lot of people. And that's what I'm seeing in a lot of my patients. Well, a lot of my clients is the fact that they are they're looking for a spiritual awakening. They're looking for like the path, like what's my path forward in a different way than it was before. So it's really kind of fun to do it. And not only that, but like trees, like as far as like flower essences and stuff are concerned, like trees are our base chakra. It's how we ground and we tap into those roots of the earth and how we can embody our life here on earth as a spiritual being in an earthly plane, which can be very difficult for a lot of people.
Yeah,
Me, I'm sure. Yes.
beautiful. Yeah, I pulled I have a tree oracle
Mhm.
deck, and so I pulled an oracle card for today to read as we're starting to talk about the medicinal uses of trees. And and I just wanted to say before I do this, the medicinal uses, you think of those for healing or curing, helping with different illnesses or disease, places of dis-ease in our bodies and things. But I was thinking yesterday how much, because we're getting ready, we have a wood burning stove, you can kind of see it behind me, and we're getting ready to bring in a bunch of firewood so that the first time we have a cold morning, we have wood ready in the house to burn. And I was thinking, well, just even the physical of a fire, how medicinal that is for our souls,
Yeah,
to
absolutely.
feel the warmth and safety and see the flames and the presences as is, it just embodies healing, right?
Hmm.
Health and healing
Every
in a
I
fire.
have a wood burning stove at my house too, and when we first set the fire, it's really exciting for me because I feel like my old friend is back. It's this
Yeah,
entity, it's this thing that's like you don't realize how much you miss it until it's been gone, and then it reappears again, and it's like, "Oh, I've missed you, old friend." And it warms
yeah,
you in a way that no other heat does. It, like, warms you from the inside out instead of just the surface, it's like this it's definitely a healing from, like, somehow, like, it's like, I'm gonna warm your bones for you, at the deepest parts of yourself. So it's like, isn't that what a tree fully embodies?
yeah,
It's the bones of, the earth. It's the bones of our structure. It's the bones of what holds everything together.
yeah, yeah. Trees are wonderful.
They are.
The oracle card, I gotta turn a little light on here to help me read here, since
Mhm.
um, the card that I pulled is called a pipple or pipal. Have you heard of a tree like that?
No, but
I
that's a
haven't
really
either.
cool one.
And so all the different, these are called tree angels deck. And so each of the pictures of each of the different trees in the card show an angel within it or right beside it. And so I didn't know what the pipal does. It says many hundreds of years ago, people had found enlightenment beneath the pipal tree.
Hmm.
And this was after which Buddha and the tree became known as the Bodhi tree or the tree of enlightenment. So this was the same
Mhm.
tree that became known as that. It was always the most sacred tree in India. It symbolizes divine omnipresence, meaning in turn that the whole earth is sacred.
Mm.
Never forget that this is not about your enlightenment, which would miss the point altogether. Look at a single leaf of the tree and then see the tree in its entirety. So, turning away from the spiritual potential that lies within us and within nature leads to being superficial and materialistic, and even more so, feeling separate and lonely.
Mm.
Um, Human beings on the earth are injured, degraded, and desecrated by when we feel that separateness and loneliness, superficiality and materialism. And then there's a little poem. Go within, empty yourself. No wishes, no plans, no fears, no fury, no future, no past. No holding back, no holding on. Breathe as everything breathes, pulse as the universe pulses.
I really like that. It talks about a lot of vulnerability in there too, without even saying that, because it's like, you know, you don't have any future, you don't have any past, just accept for what is, and it's like there's a lot of vulnerability in that because it's like opening yourself up completely and knowing that you're going to be okay. It's like, and that's what a tree does, is it like it holds you. It's like I've got you. When hugging a tree is not, it's not just for the, just for the naturalists. It's for everybody. I really feel like when you hug a tree, something changes inside of you.
Well, it does, even physically, because like if I don't sleep well at night, like the night before last, I was, we have a puppy, and I was just woke up too many times and couldn't get back to sleep. And so in the morning, when I'm trying to get ready for client sessions and things, it's like I go outside, put my hands on a tree. I'm standing barefoot or in leather soled shoes, and just ask the tree to heal me. And
Mhm.
it does. I feel the energy in me, and I have enough energy for the day, and I feel great.
Right. Isn't that so amazing? It's like you tell people that sometimes and they're like, "What are you crazy?" I'm like, "Yeah, you hug a tree and find out." You know?
Yes, it works.
Every time, every
It
time.
does.
And my tree happens to be the oak tree. I don't know why. Oak always comes to me. I live in a grove of oaks and beeches. It's really kind of funny how oak follows me around, but oak has been my tree, and I think it's too due to my ancestral lineage of just Irish. It's like that oak is in that lineage, and so it's like it's very stoic, it's very straight, it's very like it's got this composure about it, and it's kind of funny because I never realized it before, but most of the time when I go seek out a tree, it ends up being an oak. you know, it's really kind of funny how that works. It's like it's not like I'm doing it on purpose. I'm like, oh, this tree needs a hug.
Yeah. Well, let's talk then about medicinal uses of oak.
Yeah. Well, oak is just oak is a plant that I use a lot I use it a lot in the flower essence kind of realm. I don't, I mean, like trees are medicinal a lot, like all their leaves have tannins in them. You can use them as like, if you have insect bites or other skin ailments that want to astringe, tone and tighten the tissue so that way you don't have irritation and stuff like that. But I don't really typically use trees in herbal medicine, oddly enough, except if it's in that capacity of like a spray or something for, like insect bites or
Hmm.
something like that. But as a flower essence, I use it a lot because there's a lot of people that aren't grounded in themselves. And it almost helps them bring their whole bodies and their whole selves to be present in this moment. And then it helps me work with them in a way that we can now open them like a flower because until you're grounded, you can't really deal with anything else. Like that's the first step of being able to of any spiritual journey is being fully grounded in yourself before you can move on and be something, do any movement or any transformation or anything other than that because you need to be firmly grounded in who you are as yourself before you can take any other steps outside of that. And that's just what I've found in my practice. And so when people come to me, typically that's the first thing we do is we firmly ground them to who they are as themselves. Because if you can't stand in who you are as a person, then when you're out there in the world, you're going to flounder all the time. Like, no, I really like that. No, I really like that. No, I like black. No, I like white. No, I really like, and you're always constantly going back and forth and you can't firmly stand in who you are and who you want to become because you haven't had that first step of fully embodying and placing yourself as an earthly being in this world. So it's really awesome to see the transformation when people get find their tree because it's not always the oak tree for other people but it's always the oak tree for me. But for other people, I've had elder or I've had you know um I really find it funny elm a lot of the times, which I'm really kind of like digging into elm a lot more because of the Dutch elm disease and how, rare they are now. And even the chestnut, like the American chestnut has been kind of calling me because it's like, and the beech, like, because now the beech has a nematode that's causing leaf curl to it. And so it's like, how do we help these trees because of these diseases that have come? And how do they define like the American culture? Because
Mhm.
50% of the forests in America were the American chestnut tree. And that was
Oh,
a
I
big
didn't know
food
that.
source. Yeah, it was a big food source, at least to the Northeast. And it
Mhm.
was a big food source for a lot of indigenous people, a lot of birds, a lot of animals. And that's 50% of the population gone because of disease. So, how has that affected our ecosystems? How has that affected our biofields too? Because it's like people were connected to that tree. It was their life force. It was their heritage. It was, maybe the first plant that they saw when they came off, the boat, or they grew up with that, So it's like, how has that changed, our way? So that's kind of like where I've been going with trees is like, like if artificial light affects chickens, or
Right.
and makes them lay eggs all year, or they turn on the light in a barn to make a horse go into fowl earlier. So it's like, if those things are affecting us, how are diseased trees and how are these different things affecting us too? And it's like,
Very true.
you
And
know
the EMFs around all the
exactly,
everywhere
and
you
then 5G now, and like there's all these things that the earth never had before, and it's like, how is that really affecting us? And and the earth, because it's like it's a
go.
frequency that's going through the earth. We're not even realizing that. And it's like, there's sometimes I go to bed and my hearing, I have a it's not tinnitus, but I have a ringing in my ear. But then if I turn off, like if I turn off everything and I shut down the internet, all of a sudden within a couple of hours that ringing disappears. And it's like, that's funny how that works. It's like, how come I only have ringing when I'm home? Is it because there's more EMFs in my area? Like, but I also wonder too, like if I went and talked to my tree and was like, hey, this is what's going on for me. Could the tree even be like, oh, you're just not grounded. Your frequency is not grounded enough because you have all these other frequencies going on around you.
Well, could be. You'll have to ask the tree and tell me.
I know. I'm gonna. Now
I'm
it's like, oh, you
curious.
sparked an idea. I know, right?
Yeah, that's good. Now, for me, my favorite tree growing up was the cottonwood tree,
Ooh.
because they were all over our farm,
Hmm.
and big, huge. I mean, there's many of them are still there, 120 years old almost or something.
Yeah.
And
And they're great for healing.
I didn't know that. See, I was going to say I don't know what medicinal use they have here in my town, and where I live now, my home, and have been um, learning and having spiritual awakening and everything. The tree that I go to that I just adore is the linden tree, because I have
Mhm.
two great big ones right outside my door,
Oh, that's
and
great.
they're
I
my
love the
go-to.
linden.
So
The linden is so great.
it is. Well, tell me more about the cottonwood and the linden then.
So the cottonwood is really good for I make oils out of it all the time, so it's really good if you have like any bacterial infections, or like any particular like rashes or anything like that, because it's called balm of Gied, but it's that sticky resinous. Like if you get the cottonwood buds, have you ever played with the
Yeah,
with the
yeah.
branches, and you get that sticky resinous stuff all over you? Those
Uh-huh.
resins are what is actually the healing part of the plant. So when you
Oh.
put them in water, I mean, you put them in oil, the resins um, dissolve into the oil, and
So
then
you
now
use the
you use that as a
twigs.
balm. Yep, and you use it like
Wow.
before it opens, because that's when it's the stickiest.
Oh, and the
So
buds
after,
before they
right,
open.
yep,
Okay.
and typically they're falling to the ground all winter long anyway. So, you can just pick them up after a windstorm. You don't have to go there and like, harvest them from the tree. They readily fall after the windstorms and stuff like that. And you just pick them up, put them in a jar, and, put them in oil. And or as they're falling, just, every once in a while, just be like, okay, and then add more oil. But yeah, it's really
Wow.
good for that kind of stuff.
Thank you.
It's
Thank you.
like a
I
nature's band-aid.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, I love the cottonwood trees. I mean, they're home to me,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I could
And
totally see that. And then, as far as the linden is concerned, it's actually a tree of community. A lot of times people would, put a linden tree in the middle of their like in Europe, people would put the linden tree in the middle of like their, I don't know what they would call it, like their square, where they would have like their meetings, like their community meetings and stuff like that, because it would help people get a meeting of the hearts. So,
oh,
because linden is so calming, and so, like it talks to everybody's nervous system. So it really helps to be able to come to a meeting of the minds. And so, and do it in a peaceful way, which is really nice, because linden has that nervine effect on our bodies. And I love linden tea. I drank it for a whole year straight because I was like, let's see what linden does. And by the end, I was like, oh, everything's great.
Ah,
But
that's
linden is
nice.
definitely a beautiful, beautiful tree, and I love it. I love the fact that New York City, when I go there, like almost every single tree on the sidewalk is linden trees, and it's like, oh, there's a linden. Oh, there's linden. My kids are like, can you stop checking out all the trees? I'm like, "No, I can't." I was like, "There's a linden," and it's funny because, I'll people will be like, "Oh, what's that?" And I'm like, "Smell this," and it's like, "Oh," like, my daughter was sharing, like an apartment with a bunch of people, and we moved in a table, and I was like, "Oh, the linden tree," and I start picking the linden flowers off the tree, and the guy goes, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Smell this." He goes, "Oh my God, that's beautiful." I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "What is that?" I was like, "That's a linden tree." He's like, "I can't believe I've been walking past this tree for a year and I never even noticed it."
Yeah.
It's like, how can you not? It's beautifully blooming. You come out, you smell the sweetness of its flowers, and you don't even notice it. So it's like getting people to stop and just take a moment, instead of
Yeah.
rushing by. So I
Well,
was
and
happy that I can tell people in New York City to just stop for a moment.
absolutely, absolutely. And it's so that thought of community is so embodied in what I see with my trees every year because they bloom here um, late June to mid July, kind of depends on the weather.
Uh-huh.
And it's like I step outside the door when they're in full bloom and listen, and the whole air is
Yep.
there's millions of different kinds of bees. There's honeybees and bumblebees and mason bees, and they're all over the flowers of the trees outside our house, and it just vibrates.
Oh yeah. Right.
And the
It's like,
smell, like you said, the sweet scent of the
yeah,
flowers.
it's just like sweet and honey, and then there's also like the big linden and the little linden, there's different lindens, but still they all have the same kind of medicinal property. But to see like the big linden is like, I'm like, oh my God, there's a big one. It's like the big leaf linden. Yay.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just,
Uh,
and not only that, but it's also nice to be able to see friends. Like I have them here, and then I go somewhere else, and it's like, oh, there's a Linden
yeah.
too, and it's like meeting new friends. At this, I'm like, oh wait, I know your cousin over by me. It's like somebody where you're traveling. It's like you're no longer a stranger to traveling anymore because now you know
No,
all the plants.
like the card, no longer feeling separate and
Right,
lonely, right?
right,
So again,
exactly.
it's medicinal for your heart, for
Yeah,
your soul.
and not only that, but that connectedness all the time, and that
Yeah,
constantly knowing yourself, and now here we are with trees again, right? And being
yeah,
connected and grounded in who you are. So it's like it's that constant reminder of we're not alone. Be grounded in who you are. We're not alone. Be grounded in who you are.
beautiful.
Yep.
Yeah, beautiful. I wrote down a few other trees that you talked about elm. Now there's slippery elm
Yes.
also, right?
hmm
Um,
And slippery elm is endangered too because of the Dutch elm disease. So I don't typically recommend that anymore. I typically recommend marshmallow instead as an analog. There are certain times, like in cases of like real bad weaknesses, like like you can't hold anything down or other things, that I will recommend slippery elm just because it's so nutritive on top of the mucilaginous that it holds. But typically, I don't recommend slip elm anymore just because it's so endangered. But elm is really great at coating and soothing.
mhm.
It's got that mucilaginous, like I said. So mucilage, like think about it, like the base word is like mucus. So it's like, it's very thick. And it's coating. So it's, for those drying tissues or, you know, um, sore throats or digestive upset, and you can't like, the acid's just coming up into your throat. It's really good at, coating and soothing all of that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And then we talked about oak, and I had read that the acorns are the one of the best foods for people that might have TB or AIDS because
Yeah.
it's so nutritious as well as
Well, it's
I
really high
guess
in proteins. So that's,
okay.
that's really what it is. So, but you also have to, I actually had a friend of mine who decided she wanted to make acorn flour from her acorns where she lived. And so she did. She went and collected them, and she did make acorn flour, but it was a process because there's a lot of tannins in there, like I said. So you have to cook them and boil them a lot of times to get all those tannins out before the acorn is usable. But it's definitely it was a food source of our ancestors for sure. The Native Americans used it as a food source a lot, in their foods. They would grind it, and cook it, but it's definitely a process. And it, you know,
Yeah, yeah, for sure. This is another different type of process, but black walnuts, beside again being a nutritious food or very
or an ink.
tasty.
They also used it as an ink.
Okay.
Hmm.
And
Yeah. So the quill pens originally, the black walnut was the ink that they used.
oh, that's neat. I
Yeah,
didn't know
isn't that
that
really
either.
cool?
Yeah,
I
it
like
is.
historical things.
Yeah. But I was reading that because I use black walnut hulls, right?
Hmm.
To make as part of antifungal
Hmm.
salve. So I've used that for years to take care of like athlete's foot or other itches,
Right.
rashes that you might get, or toenail fungus. Right, it
Works
works
great.
really great for that too. But I was reading where it is great. You make a tincture and use it as a mouthwash for tooth repair and cavities.
Oh, yes. Yep.
And
I
I
wouldn't
thought,
use it
wow,
all by itself, though.
oh, because it's
Yeah,
very bitter.
it is. It's really bitter.
Okay.
So I would
Mhm.
sweeten it up with things like cinnamon or clove, definitely, because clove's really good for the mouth too and healing and repair. But yeah,
Uh,
black walnut, it's good with plantain too if you're going to use it for the mouth.
okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
Interesting.
Spilanthes is another plant you can use for the mouthwash too, but I wouldn't just use black walnut by itself.
That
But
makes
yeah.
sense. Yeah, that makes
Mhm.
sense.
But it really helps to build that bone structure back because now here we are again dealing with trees, and trees typically have to do with the bone structure.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Mhm.
Yeah. Then I was thinking, ginkgo is another tree that people would be real familiar with medicinal uses. I don't know if.
Yep, and and if you look at it, it's shaped like the brain. So it's definitely good for those nerves in the synapses of your brain. So it's good for people that, suffer from slow memory or forgetfulness. So it definitely helps with bringing blood to those small capillaries in the brain. And
Oh,
it's really
very
kind
cool.
of, yeah. And it's fun to see like the leaf structures of all these different plants. They're not all the same. And it's like, I mean, I took a botany class. I just started taking a botany class recently, and not that I've taken ones millions of times, but then I stop, and then but to like I can now you can be like, oh, well, this is a blah 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 oak, and then this is another one just based on the leaf structure, and that
Mhm.
just fascinates me that people can be like, oh, well, that's a shrub oak, and that's a white oak, and that's a red oak, or that's and but the ginkgo has this very specific leaf, and it's not like a leaf it's not like there's a million different varieties of ginkgo, but the
Right.
leaf structure of it is really interesting, and to be able to be like, oh, well, that looks like the brain, or that looks like a synapse, it kind of helps you uncover, which is the science behind it is, well, I don't know if it's a science, but the study behind it is called the doctrine of signatures. So it's like it's called the doctrine of signatures. So it's like what organ or thing does that plant look like? And then you're like, oh wait, or the color, like there's different ways to kind of figure out what the doctrine of signatures of that plant is. And that's what our ancestors used to figure out the medicinal uses of different plants.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah,
Hmm.
that is awesome. Um, I was thinking another one medicine from a tree that people would be very familiar with, although I don't think you can buy it the original style anywhere in the world anymore, but the white willow and salicylic acid that was the origination of aspirin.
Yes. Yep. And actually, to be honest with you, meadowsweet has the more of the
Medicine.
acid in it than the willow. But the willow is also good. You can also use the willow tree to help root different plants too. So if you take the young green part of the willow and you add it to water, you can actually use that as a root stimulant instead of the hormone that you paint on there.
Hmm.
Yeah. But
Oh,
willow is
that's
really
cool.
great, and it loves the water, which is, even better, but just be careful, don't plant it by your cesspool.
Yeah. Now I'm just going to go back to what you said instead of the willow, what other plant or
Meadowsweet.
meadowsweet? And so that's more like an herb, not a tree,
Yeah, that's
right?
yeah,
Uh-huh.
that's more like an herb, not a tree. But
Yeah.
yeah, originally, isn't that really cool? And it's funny
It
because it's like
is.
typically, a headache or whatever is like a hot condition. But here you are, you have the willow tree that grows in a really moist environment. It usually likes water. So it's like, do you see
Yeah.
how energetically one cancels out the other? So it's really, it
Yeah, for
balances the other.
balance.
hmm Exactly. So it's really kind of an interesting thing once you start learning about plants. It's like, oh, wait, that grows there, but it's good for, this condition. It's like, oh, wait, cayenne pepper is good at vasodilation, but then it's like, oh, great. But is it a hot, does that make it hot? Does that make it cold? But it'll also stop bleeding. So there's a lot of dichotomies in nature, especially when you're dealing with plant medicine, because it's like, oh, well, how do I know when to use that plant? Because it's like, like, oh, marshmallow is good for coating and soothing tissues, but do you want to coat and soothe tissues when you already have a bronchial cough and, like you're coughing up a lot of mucus? Probably not. You might want the cayenne instead, So thinking about those energetics of plants too is kind of an interesting thing.
Yeah, well, very cool. So if there was, well, for you, you'd said, I would take this as if you had only could pick one tree around you, you would pick the oak tree.
Yeah, well, it picks me.
Picks you.
Yeah. It picks me.
So you don't have like one tree for medicinal uses or whatever that you would recommend, like as say that would be good for everyone. That you would be a top recommendation if someone wanted to plant a tree in their yard and they looked researched a little and found that it was could grow in their
I
climate
really like the
area.
hawthorn tree. And the reason why is because I've been really kind of getting into thorn medicine. So hawthorn is a tree that's really great for grief, and I feel like it's kind of an herb for our days now. A lot of people are living in grief and fear
Mhm.
and all these things. And so what it does, hawthorn also regulates the blood pressure. So if you have low blood pressure, it'll bring it to up, and if you have high blood pressure, it'll bring it down. It's also
Okay.
really great for the heart, not only like our physical heart, but also our emotional heart. And so I feel like in this day and age, we really need a lot of support for our emotional heart. So hawthorn is really great. And the fact that it's in the rose family. And so the rose family, most of them are really good for the heart, but it helps to be vulnerable and be soft, but it also has that thorn for protection too. So it's like you can be open, you can be vulnerable, but you can also have boundaries. Just because you're soft and open doesn't mean you accept everything. And that's why I love hawthorn so much, is because it's this tree with these large thorns, depending on the age of the tree, they can
Mhm.
become quite large. So it's like, and it's like, come to me, but come to me carefully and slowly. Don't just grab me. Don't just take me. Like, I have boundaries. And I feel like it's really important because a lot of people, they think softness doesn't have a boundary. And
Mhm.
especially women. So, like, I think that Hawthorne gives us that example of softness with a boundary. And it's okay, and it also teaches us a way to approach it, not just come up and just grab it. It's like,
Yeah.
come up to me gently and ask me permission, and then I'll see if I grant you that or not. And I don't know, I just feel like it's a really good lesson for a lot of us. So
Oh,
I think Hawthorne would be one of my favorites for sure.
that's beautiful, beautiful. I'm going to plant a hawthorn tree in my yard. I had a small red bud die, and
A
just
space.
I have a space. So
Yeah, and I also like Hawthorne because it's not, like, it's not like a tree that I mean, it gets big, but it's not like a tree that's like an oak that's 80 feet high. And now to, you be able to utilize it, it's totally out of reach. Your hawthorn tree is going to be able to be utilized for a really long time before it becomes out of reach.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Well, April, I think that's a beautiful, beautiful place to end our conversation today.
Oh,
And
great.
it's just, yeah, that's lovely. Do you have any closing thoughts, advice, or anything you'd like to give people who were interested in getting into herbal medicine,
Oh,
or
sure.
more doing something, for themselves or experiencing it from?
Well, I definitely think, befriend a tree, whatever tree speaks to you, for sure. It's definitely, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. You're not crazy. And be kind. Be kind to yourself, and no be confident in who you are. I think that's what trees teach us the most is, be confident in who you are, even if it is a little strange to others, because we're always going to be strange. So
And I encourage people too, if you're just starting to hold a tree, but you're concerned about what your neighbors are going to think or whatever, then pick the biggest tree that you can, that's easily available to you,
or
and
bring a book and sit on, like, sit
there you
behind.
go,
Yep,
sit
and then
behind
you're
it.
not weird anymore, right? Because you're
That's
just reading
right.
a book leaning on a tree. There's ways around it.
Right, there is. Or bring your children with you if you have
Yes,
young children at home, and then it can be like everyone's playing a game.
right. Or, start the maypole, around a tree, or, there's many ways to, and they like it. They also like it. It makes them happy because trees give, so willingly and so generously that, I just thank them all the time. I don't ever, like, I mean, I do ask for things from time to time, but most of the time, when I'm approaching a tree, it's, I see you. What can I do for you instead of what you can do for me? And the gifts that just come to me just because I'm, what can I do for you? And
Yeah,
it's not even like I'm expecting it or anything. I just, it's just what happens.
yeah.
Reciprocity happens very naturally in the natural environment, I think.
Yes, yes, for sure. So, April, could you tell people how to get hold of you, please?
Sure. It's blooming-curiosity.com is my email, is my web address, and then it's april@blooming-curiosity.com if you want to email me. Yeah.
All right, very good. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, April, for joining all of us. Thank you, everyone, for watching today.
Bye.